Hello, my name's Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
Welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal, a chapter-by-chapter podcast of the A Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin.
Our hope is to chat about the chapter without spoiling anything that is to come in an entertaining half hour.
This is episode 9, chapter 8 of A Game of Thrones, Bran 2. We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some interesting background, compare it to the TV show, indulge in a little pedantry, and if we have any, cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out our show notes. They provide some useful background information about the characters and other things we talk about today. If you like what we're doing, you can support the show by leaving a review on iTunes, Podchaser, or wherever you listen. That would make our day and really help get the word out. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad,
All right. So, I do have a somewhat related podcast story
exciting.
to relate. So, I guess it was for last week's episode. I dropped Molly off at swim practice, like I do every day of my life, and went across the street to the library to do some audio editing to make us sound less like stumbling fools.
Very little of that required.
Right. And it was just about wrapping up. I was actually shutting my computer down, and I get a call from my wife, Stacy, and she's like, "You got to get home right now." And I was like, "Uh-oh, what happened?" And she said, The handle to the shower came off of my hand, and I can't get the water to stop pouring out. Scalding hot water is pouring everywhere. And she goes, "Oh, and the shower door fell off." I was like, "What? How did these two things happen at the same time?" She goes, "I may have slammed the door really hard." So I drive over, pick up Molly, come home, and I run upstairs. I told her to get a wrench to try and turn the water off with that, and so she couldn't get done. But I get up and I take the wrench and turn it off, and she goes, "Oh," and I went down in the basement and I found a knob and turned it, but it didn't stop the water, so I don't know what I've done. It's like, "Lady, please just stop doing things. Please quit trying to help."
It's got visions of her just like sort of barreling into the shower, knocking the door off, into the handle. Oops, that's not working anymore. Well, that's good.
So I didn't get to finish editing that night.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll be done in time. So, thank you for that digression. That was good. One thing we've been asked to do is give a little recap of what's happened before for the characters we're about to talk about. So, when we last checked in with Bran, he was returning from watching his father Ned behead Garrod. During that trip, they found the direwolf pups and the stag antler in the throat of the direwolf. We did also see him in Arya's chapter jousting with Prince Tommen.
Right. Yes.
And that's the last we saw of him. So, McKelly, why don't you give us a summary of this chapter?
All right. Well, Bran is extremely excited about his impending new life in King's Landing. He can't wait to meet some of the other legendary knights of the Kingsguard, especially Sir Barristan the Bold. Bran dreams of being a member of the Kingsguard himself. Most of the other lords and lads rode out on a boar hunt this morning. Only Jon, the girls, and baby Rickon were left behind, and Jon and Ghost have disappeared. Jon seems to be mad at the world these days, and Bran is unsure why. Jon's going to the Night's Watch with their Uncle Ben, and in Bran's estimation, that's about as exciting as his move to King's Landing. Ned told him to say his goodbyes, but he doesn't know where to start, so as he moves through the castle looking for people to say farewell to, he starts to get a bit sad and choked up about leaving his home. So he runs off to the Godswood with his yet unnamed wolf, so nobody can see him tearing up. He's tried 100 names for his wolf, but none seem to fit so far. And after a failed attempt to teach the wolf to fetch a stick, Bran decides to do his favorite activity one final time, and he scales the walls of Winterfell. His mother forbids him from climbing, but he just can't help himself. He climbs high up the towers of the castles, where he feels like the Lord of Winterfell. While high up on the wall of the first keep, he hears voices talking about his father. He can't see into the room, but they are talking about the trouble Ned could cause them as Hand of the King, referring several times to accusations that his Aunt Lysa Arryn has made, and her possibly knowing something. That her fleeing King's Landing was to keep young Robert from being fostered at Casterly Rock, basically making him a hostage for her silence. The woman hopes that King Robert dies soon, putting Joffrey on the throne, but she thinks Ned might not be loyal to Joff as he is to Robert. Bran finally shifts around to see in the window. He spots two people naked and wrestling. At least from his perspective, they're wrestling.
He is 7.
Yes. He realizes that it's Queen Cersei and her twin brother Jamie. When the queen spots him, he startles and slips from his position. As he falls, Jamie grabs Bran and pulls him up onto the ledge. But then he pushes him out the window for love.
Yeah. It feels like to this point we've been putting the pieces on the board.
Right. Yes.
But now the first move in anger has been made.
The game is being played.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, one thing we learn is that the Targaryens aren't the only family that are keeping it in the family.
Yeah.
So
apparently, yeah.
When
Jamie and Cersei.
I know we're gonna do a comparison with the TV show later, but when we were watching this on the TV show,
Because this made it to the TV show.
Yes, this bit was in the TV show. Yeah, we're watching it, and Bran looks in and sees that it's Cersei and Jamie, and Stacey goes, "Wait, I thought, aren't they?" I was like, "Yep, they are." She's like, "Oh, okay."
Did you tell them that they were just actors? Playing pretend.
Although, unlike the Targaryens, this affair seems very much secret.
Yeah, I mean, they climbed the derelict tower at Winterfell to do this, so they clearly were not parading it around in front of people. They were not expecting to find Bran up there with them.
Yeah. I imagine Robert's already not a fan of Cersei. He's made it pretty clear he's not exactly in love with his wife, so I don't think this would endear her further.
Cause and effect, perhaps. I mean, she clearly has other interests herself.
It's a good point. I think this would cost them their heads, though. Likely.
Yeah. So the most important part of, obviously for Bran, the most important part is gravity, but the most important part of the chapter is the conversation that he overhears.
Yes.
So clearly they are nervous about Ned's impending arrival as Hand of the King. Yeah. But interestingly, Cersei more nervous than Jamie. Jamie seems to think that Ned's quite honourable and
he'll do the right thing, whatever it is.
And that's his motivation, whereas Cersei sees him as, an enemy. I mean, they literally call him an enemy at one point.
Yep.
Cersei wanted Jamie to have the job as Hand of the King.
Right.
But I can certainly... That seems like a reach for Robert to want that. He's married to a Lannister. The Lannisters sort of bankroll the kingdom.
Right, yeah.
And now he makes the Lannister heir his hand. That's a lot of Lannister information coming into his ears. And...
Plus, he's already a member of the Royal Kingsguard, so...
Right. I mean, you'd have to let him out of that, I suppose, to do that.
Yeah, but she mentions that Ned becoming Hand puts them in danger. And is it in danger of discovery of the incestuous affair or Arryn's death? Because in Catelyn 2, we get this note that Lysa Arryn...
Yeah, the Lannisters are responsible.
Yeah, names Cersei directly. So is it... what exactly is the danger? Is it both of those things? Is there more,
Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, obviously... There's the fact he's not a friend to the Lannisters particularly,
right.
And so the risk of their affair coming out. Of course, we've no idea how long this affair is going on. We were talking about this earlier. It may just be the cold winter air has driven them into each other's arms for the first time. There's a suggestion that that's not the case, but presumably the bigger worry is Jon Arryn's death. I mean, if Lysa Arryn has evidence that Cersei is responsible. Ned coming down to King's Landing certainly leads to the fact he might discover it. He might discover what that is.
And that's exactly why Kat says he needs to go when she's trying to convince him to go down there and figure out whether Cersei... So she's right. In that regard, Cersei's right. Yeah. That is part of the plan. Yeah. One thing we just quick get a reference to is that Robert has 2 younger brothers, which we will discuss more about in the background section.
Yeah. And Cersei literally asks, suggests and hopes that Robert dies soon, which is... I mean, again, he's not treating her great, but that's a little bit unfair.
That's kind of harsh, I guess. But, the feelings seem rather mutual.
I would say so, yeah.
She mentions how long before he replaces me with another Lyanna.
Yeah, that's true. And so perhaps that worries her for the succession. if she were
Right.
to be replaced and he were to sire new true-born heirs, they would have a claim to the throne above her own son Joffrey.
Good point. Yeah.
So maybe...
But also with him gone and Joff on the throne, Joff being a 12-year-old, she stands to have more influence over the realm than she does currently with Robert.
And if Robert were to meet an untimely demise, Joffrey would be so young that the current hand of the king would have a lot of power.
Yes,
and
exactly.
so Ned would be in a position of power. Yeah.
Yeah, and as he's underage, as Joff is underage, he will need a regent until he comes of age. So it will be likely that Ned, as king, hand of the king for his father, would step in to become the regent.
But that would immediately create an interesting power struggle, of course, because he was hand of the king to the now dead king, and therefore his authority is gone.
Right.
And so you could imagine Cersei arguing, well, you're not the hand to this king.
Right.
Joffrey will appoint his own hand, who will be the regent until he comes of age, and it's not going to be you.
And as his mother, I would tell him who it's going to be.
Exactly. And it might actually be me, because that way I don't have to go through a middleman.
Right.
Yeah.
They refer to lies as accusations. They didn't admit to anything necessarily, even in private, but this accusations thing... So if they're aware of accusations that Lysa's making, why all the cloak and dagger stuff with the lens and the message? And is it different accusations, maybe?
Well, my thinking is that her fleeing King's Landing is an accusation in some way.
Okay.
Although, but I think that's a stretch too, because if I were Lysa Arryn and Jon has died completely of natural causes, I might just want to get out of there with my son, so that my son doesn't get taken from me and fostered somewhere else.
Right.
Regardless of anything else. If I believe that Jon has been murdered by someone, and that someone has authority in King's Landing, sure, I'm definitely going to leave.
Right.
So, from Cersei's point of view, she's maybe only seeing the second of those two things. That
them fleeing means that they are accusing someone in King's Landing.
Right.
Someone with power.
But certainly doesn't show that they've got any evidence, unless somehow the Lannisters intercepted the message that we don't think could have been intercepted, because it was hidden in a box, written in a cipher, and burned as soon as it was read. So I'm not sure, but obviously there's a nervousness there which suggests guilt.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Jamie says that if Lysa would have known anything, she would have gone to Robert. So is there something to know then?
Yeah, so it actually says, let Lady Arryn grow as bold as she likes. Whatever she knows, whatever she thinks she knows, she has no proof. He paused for a moment, or does she?
Uh-huh.
So that last statement suggests that there's the potential that proof exists. It doesn't say Jamie necessarily knows it.
Right.
He may not. It feels a little bit like he's abdicating responsibility towards Cersei.
Right.
Is
there something she could prove?
Right, exactly.
Oh.
But there's nothing... I mean, man, there's a lot. They say a lot of things that make you... that are slightly self-incriminating in that conversation.
Yeah.
And that Bran overheard it all is a real problem for them. And so... I was reminded... did you ever see the movie Minority Report?
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that movie. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
There's... The police department have never actually investigated a murder, because they've always had the precogs to stop the murders. And so when the actual murder happens, the one person, Colin Farrell, is the FBI guy or whatever, who has investigated murders before. He says, you see this crime scene? He said, this is an orgy of evidence. And I was just reminded of that comment when I was reading this chapter, because they just talk about so many things that are so incriminating at the same time. So
they don't actually cop to anything specifically,
not quite,
but they certainly put it out there that something is going on.
Yeah.
It's just interesting that Lysa went through all that trouble to get a secret message to her sister, but yet they're like talking about accusations.
Right,
so if she
just by leaving King's Landing, she might as well have skywritten the accusation, apparently. So they believe that Lysa knew that Robert being fostered at Castle Rock with Tywin Lannister was akin to him being a hostage.
Right.
So, again, though, for me, that's enough. That's enough for Lysa to want to flee King's Landing.
Right. Yeah.
Unless... I mean, but it sort of also depends on what the relationship was between Lysa and Cersei. If Lysa and Cersei were good buddies, then you wouldn't mind necessarily your son being fostered by her father.
Yeah. Seems like that might not have been the case.
I'm guessing, yeah.
Well, there's a lot. I guess we'll find out when we're meant to find out. But I thought it was really a lot of information.
But one thing I would say is that when Jamie catches Bran, if he's replaying the conversation in his mind, he would be like, "Oh, good God, I've got to silence this child."
Right. Is it because of the conversation or because of the fact that Bran just walked in? He's 7 though. That would be a lot easier to explain. Like he doesn't know. He didn't know what he saw. And so I don't get.
It feels to me like you could lie to the kid about the sex.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
You could tell the kid that something was happening that he doesn't understand and fool him into silence. But if I'm Jamie, I'm thinking he's heard stuff that cannot be unheard, and I've got to silence him.
It can't be unheard unless I push him out this window.
Right.
It seems like that would be something. He's 7. It's not like he's 12. It seems like you could just dispute whatever he says. Like, I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah. I mean, there's not much oxygen up there that high. He's just dreaming stuff. I was in the stables the whole time.
Yeah, I don't know what he's going on about.
But when you've got a kid by the scruff of the neck who's about to destroy your life, and you happen to be holding him outside of a high window, the temptation to let go.
There is a temptation, I guess.
I mean, I wouldn't do it.
Right.
I like to think I have a moral code, but there was a lot of pressure on Jamie in that moment. So, yeah, the other things, Robert's not going to Castle Black.
No, he came all this way.
Well,
all the way to Winterfell.
There's still a long way to go. It's a big old place.
Yeah, but, in chapter... Oh, man, I get the chapter numbers confused anymore.
It's partly because of our episode numbers.
Yes, right. Chapter 4, Eddard 1. Ned mentions to Robert that Benjen is saying the Night's Watch is in some trouble, and they could use some help. And he's like, I'll deal with that later. I want to make you my hand.
Yeah.
So Ned clearly feels like it would have made a difference.
Yeah.
That he should go visit the wall.
I think some of it is a different perspective on what the wall's about. I think in the north they believe that the wall is a necessary defense of the kingdom. From King's Landing's perspective, you're like, I don't know why we have that wall.
Why do we even have that in the first place?
It's just a bunch of really cold Eskimos north of that wall. They're not a threat to anyone. Really.
Good place to send prisoners.
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly. Yeah,
get the riffraff out of King's Landing.
Keeps my prisons empty. Yeah.
If you remember in Catelyn 1, Ned and Catelyn are having a conversation about is Garrett that dies in the.
It's Garrett. Yeah.
Garrett dies in the book. Yeah, about Garrett. Him deserting, and Ned is saying, I might need to rally the banners and head north and take care of this Mance Raider. So Ned feels like they could be trouble. But like you said, that's trouble for Ned. They're
right, not for Robert. Yeah.
Robert probably doesn't really care about all that.
If he had a hand to guide him at this point, he might think of the strategic importance of a quick visit to the wall. But he doesn't.
Nope, they're heading south.
Yeah.
But Jon's heading north.
He is, yes.
He's off to, not yet, but he will soon be off to Castle Black with his Uncle Benjen. So I would think that should be very exciting. That's what he wanted.
Yeah.
Maybe he's thinking it through now or something.
Possibly, yeah. Well, we don't know. We didn't hear from him in this episode, but he's mad about something.
Yeah, he's off brooding somewhere.
Yeah. But we've been talking about this a lot, about Jon's being slighted by the Starks. I think one of the things I've noticed is that back in chapter 1, Jon seemed part of the team. He was part of Team Stark. He was involved in the beheading and everything. Since then, he's been slighted at every opportunity. But I think that's probably just because the royal party is in town, and Catelyn is determined to keep him on the back burner while the royals are in town.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And Ned's too busy to recognise the unfairness of it to fix it. You know what I mean? I think if Ned wasn't busy hosting the royal party, he might say, you know what, Cat, let's be nice.
He's up on the board.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
He's 14.
So I don't think that Jon can have been treated like this his whole life. I think he would have run away to the Night's Watch years ago.
Right, yeah. If what we're seeing is daily life for Jon, which it doesn't seem, but if it were, he's probably better off at the Night's Watch. Yeah. The thing is Ned brought him home and is raising him with the other kids. So if you're going to raise them with the kids, raise them with the kids.
Yeah.
And the thing that makes Jon unique is that most recognized natural-born, which is another name for bastards, natural-born kids aren't brought to their lord's keep and raised with their two true-born siblings. So why do that and then exclude him?
Yeah.
Clearly, it has a lot to do with his wife not being a fan.
Right.
But he's already gone down that rabbit hole. So, you kind of made your bed. You brought him in with the kids. Now you gotta treat him like one of the kids, I guess. But you're right. Based on chapter 1, before the royals got there, he was being treated a lot more like one of the kids.
So we've jumped to the important parts. We skipped over some things that haven't. We got some cool descriptions of Winterfell. There were old tunnels and secret paths.
Yeah.
Broken towers. So.
I like the descriptions of Winterfell. I like how Bran refers to the broken tower, it being struck by lightning 100 years before even his father was born. his elderly father, who's probably
30.
About 30. It was 100 years even before father was born. Kids.
And Bran's climbing, well, probably would have been nice to enjoy some of Bran's climbing, but
yeah,
yeah.
I guess that's probably done.
Yeah.
They mentioned that the rooftops were like a second home to him, so he's probably done it a good bit. And more evidence of Ned being an old softy when he told Bran, "Go ahead and climb, just don't let your mother see."
Yeah. So, some background information. The Lannister twins mention Robert's brothers. So Stannis Baratheon is Robert's younger brother. He's the Lord of Dragonstone. We've talked about Dragonstone a couple of times. It's where Daenerys was born. Yes. He's a big man like Robert, but more severe and joyless. He's balding with a close-cut beard. His wife is Selyse Florent, and they have one daughter, Shireen Baratheon. He is master of ships and therefore serves on Robert's small council, which is a circle of trusted advisors.
Yep, Lord of Dragonstone. Renly Baratheon is the third of the Baratheon brothers. He's master of laws and so also serves on the small council. He's also big but clean-shaven and better looking than his brothers. He has the charm and charisma that Stannis lacks. He's as yet unmarried. Both brothers spent Robert's rebellion besieged in the ancestral home, Storm's End, and witnessed starvation and privation. Although Renly was only a child, he's 13 years younger than Stannis and 15 younger than Robert. Renly is Lord of Storm's End. Stannis feels aggrieved that he got the crappy Dragonstone while his younger brother got Storm's End. But the heir to the Iron Throne is often styled as the Lord of Dragonstone. So it's a debatable slight.
Yeah, that is an interesting one because it's definitely bleaker. I mean, Storm's End is on the mainland and Dragonstone... Without dragons, Dragonstone is fairly inhospitable.
Right.
I mean, if you have a dragon that you fly around on, like the Targaryens used to do, that would be okay.
Yeah.
The Targaryens moved to King's Landing. They didn't stay out there.
Maybe he could ask for just the title only.
Yeah. I don't have any background on this, but they did also mention another member of the small council, somebody called Littlefinger. We'll talk about him more when he comes up more in the story. They mentioned the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard is Barristan Selmy, Barristan the Bold. House Selmy is from the Stormlands, and so already owed its allegiance to House Baratheon. Makes him a good choice for the Kingsguard. But he was Kingsguard to Aerys Targaryen, and so fought against Robert during the rebellion. He was severely wounded at the Battle of the Trident, where Robert killed Rhaegar. And so he missed the sack of King's Landing. He was being nursed back to health and essentially imprisoned by the Baratheons at that time. So it's interesting that he was forgiven and reinstated after all this settled down. I wonder if he has torn loyalties because of that. I wonder if
maybe. Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
I guess Robert kept him because he's a handy guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be like... he's in his 50s now, but still quite the swordsman, yeah.
So... This wasn't mentioned in the summary, but if you're reading along with us, you know that Bran mentions several of the legendary members of the Royal Kingsguard, and one of them that he mentions is Prince Aemon Targaryen, the Dragon Knight. And he was Lord Commander of the Kingsguard about 100 years ago or so, and he was legendarily noble and skilled and is still a popular figure today. He served 4 kings.
Yeah, now I have a thing about that. Because I don't think a Kingsguard should serve that many kings, to be honest.
Right.
You're not doing your job properly if you keep on having to serve
That's a good point.
different kings.
Yes,
One ought to be the target. Maybe two if he's older than you.
Right.
If he dies before you do, that's not your fault. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it seems like you might be failing your job a bit.
Yeah. So, comparison with the television show, I think the biggest, much of this is captured. Bran wanders around Winterfell and then climbs the tower. The biggest difference is, and I watched this too, I thought this was the case, he doesn't overhear anything in the TV show. In the TV show, it's purely witnessing the sex is what gets him thrown out the window. So, in some respects, like we were talking about before, I think Jamie is, I'm going to use air quotes here, justified in throwing book Bran out of the window. Whereas I don't think he was in throwing TV show Bran.
Right.
Because all he witnessed was sex.
Yeah.
And you can absolutely fool. Now, Bran is a little bit older in the TV show. He's 10.
Okay.
And he's only 7 in the book.
Yeah.
So perhaps a 10-year-old might be able to piece it together better than the 7-year-old.
Maybe, but still, he's...
Yeah. But he didn't... There was no conversation. There was nothing he heard that could have incriminated them in any way.
Right.
So all of this incriminating discussion, all this orgy of evidence is missing from the show. So they push him out purely for seeing them in the TV show.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that's why I keep thinking when they're talking about accusations and stuff that they're referring to the incestual relationship. Well, not necessarily accusations, but that the things that Lysa might know.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, she's been in King's Landing. And, and this, like we say, is not a one-off, but
it seems like an ongoing thing. But at the same time, it's almost certainly not what they're talking about, because clearly this seems to be a regular thing for them.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be something like they would be like, oh no, we're going to be found out about this.
Interesting. There are a couple of pieces of pedantry. You know I do love my pedantry.
You do.
Bran described earlier in the chapter how he likes to remove his footwear to climb. It feels like he's got 4 hands, is what he said.
I remember.
But then later on, when he was talking about running across the roof of the barracks or something, he said that he would take his shoes off to do that, so he would be quieter. I'm like, you've already taken your shoes off.
How many pairs of shoes does this guy wear?
Exactly. And the other one is, he described something, I don't remember what it was, but as tasting like winter peaches.
Oh, right, yeah.
But I'm just guessing what a winter peach is, because we don't actually explain what a winter peach is. I would say it's either a summer peach preserved for eating in the winter, or some kind of hardy peach that grows in the winter.
Yeah.
Okay. He's 7 years old, and summer's been going on for 9 years. He would never have tasted a winter peach.
Unless they preserve really well.
Right. But again, there are peaches growing on the trees. It's summer. Why eat keep that? Winter's coming, remember? So, yeah.
Good point. I did not even think of that.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for, pedantry. So, wrapping up, I think we've been waiting for something to happen, and I guess you need to be careful what you wish for, because I did not want that to happen to Bran. By the way, one thing I did do actually was watching the TV show. I tried to estimate the height that he fell.
Yeah.
Just to see. I mean, because if you're reading along, Bran might survive this fall. We don't know. I mean, it seemed like it was pretty high. In the TV show, I'm going to guess it was about 40 feet that he fell.
Ouch.
And I did
What's below is the...
I did research, and there were some rocks below, so it wasn't great.
Right.
I did some research, and the median height at which a fall becomes fatal is 4 stories, which is 48 feet.
Oh, okay. So he's in the grey zone
and
there.
He's a small child, so maybe small child doesn't have the same momentum when he hits. I don't know.
He'll bounce a little bit.
I mean, that's the TV show. Could be different.
Right.
The tower might have been way, way taller in the book, but
interesting.
I had to read up on that. Is he going to survive? I'm playing along, but I don't know.
Right. Yeah, there was a lot going on in that conversation between Cersei and Jamie. Ned as a hand is dangerous for them. And the feeling that Ned is moving against them because he's willing to leave his seat of power.
Yeah, but again, I'm with Jamie on this. I mean, to me, the obvious explanation for that is his honourableness, not his ambition. He's bringing him. Cersei can't see anything but ambition. Wherever she looks, she sees plots against her, and
It does seem that way.
Yeah.
They consider Ned an enemy. They straight up say, "I'd rather have an honourable enemy than an ambitious one. So I guess they consider maybe the Starks in general because of the bad blood between the two families.
Yeah, I think part of it, you get the sense that the Lannisters are pulling the strings on Robert as a puppet, and that Ned's hand will stop that.
True.
That he'll get him back thinking straight.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
And then we get that, to me, kind of confusing conversation about Lysa's accusations, because I thought the accusations were secret. But like we discussed, it could be that her leaving was an accusation. And she never actually had to make a verbal accusation.
And again, it goes to Cersei's mindset. Her mindset is, everybody else's actions are against me.
Right.
Nobody's doing an action which is not, it's sort of typical narcissistic personality. You're doing this because you want to do something to me.
All right. Yeah.
There's no way you have any kind of motive that doesn't involve me.
Good psychology there. I like
perhaps. And Cersei wants Robert to die.
She does. She straight up says it, sooner rather than later. Yeah. And Jon's been told about going to the Night's Watch. We weren't there for that, but if Bran knows he's going, then
presumably Jon does too, unless he's really on the outs. All right, everyone, don't tell him. But all right, well, that's it. It's a good chapter. I mean, I really feel like the story's getting going.
Yes, now we've got some teeth.
And of course, who knows how this will change plans. I mean, Ned was going to King's Landing.
He was. Tomorrow they were leaving. Yeah. I have a hunch, regardless of whether Bran lives or dies, this is going to delay their departure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as always, you can reach us at ghosts.harrenhal@gmail.com and follow us on Twitter @ghostsharrenhal. I guess that's it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.